Welcome to episode 2 of Project Protolis. In this episode, we will be talking about the first multicellular organisms to come onto this cold planet. The first multicellular life may be plants. They would use a helium sac to hold much of their structure up and have to top leaves and to main bottom leaves. Although they will still be able to photosynthesize with their whole body, the helium sac would take up much of their top body and would even extend slightly into their stem. They would also have a network of roots that would transport nutrients from the water into them, but they wouldn't be able to hold the plant upright because that is what the helium sac is for. The males of this species would have shorter tendrils so they can basically supercharge their gametes to the water. And the females would have longer ones so they can capture the gametes the males produce more effectively. The plants would be a dark blue or purple color. The reason they are this color is because they are on a planet that orbits a K-type star. K-type stars emit more red and green light, so the plants on this planet would absorb the red and green light and reflect more blue and purple light. And as a wise man once said, all speculative biology projects need something cool about them. So in the spring to summer the plants on Protolis will be purple, and when fall to winter hits they will turn more orange, but still keep their leaves. We will call these plants phytoporphyrous. The next life form on Protolis would be autotrophic as well, but instead of photosynthesizing they would use the abundant methane and hydrogen sulfide in the atmosphere to power their cells. Autotrophy is when an organism can use the sun or another method to get their energy, such as how plants use photosynthesis or how chemosynthesizing creatures use gases like carbon dioxide and methane to power themselves instead of eating other creatures. These animals would use the rain and the air to collect their chemicals. Since they are immobile, they may use many chemicals. This would also include oxygen as one. So they may partner up with the plants in Protolis and use the oxygen they make to grow. And these may produce back carbon dioxide for the plants on Protolis to use. And these would evolve white out the threat of predators in the young oceans. This means it would be able to take over the globe. They would become worldwide superorganisms and split into four main groups. The northern ones and southern ones would constantly fight over resources and even start using oxygen and stick to only methane and carbon dioxide. They would have many tentacle-like things they would use to grow. They would grow one of these tendrils and they sense a chemical deposit. Then they would start putting more resources into this growth, forming a thin covering onto it. Then it would start forming tissue and finally become its own part of it, able to sense its environment. We will call these creatures Leunium chimicos tragon. The third animal we will be talking about will be similar to a jellyfish. It will have two main tentacles. It will extend all the way to the top of their body and will have a simple filter structure at the bottom of them. Both of the creature's limbs would be used for locomotion. They would firstly moving liquid into their stomach cavity with the help of their limbs, and then pushing it out, making a vacuum that would propel them forward. The thing on the bottom of them would be made of millions of microscopic hairs that would form a net that could catch zooplankton. They could then push this net into themselves to feast on it. These creatures may be bilaterally symmetrical, meaning that they would be two mirror images on each side. These creatures would also be able to inflate their arms with water to be able to reach farther distances or to escape predation. We will call these jellyfish copies zoophytrupatet. The next creatures in our list would also be filter feeders, using three main tentacles. Would have small hairs on them to catch small animals, and have a large sucking thing on the top of them to absorb small plankton and zooplankton. These animals may grow into the sediment, having a holding structure on their bodies. Since these animals will be the most complex on Protolis, they may need blood. We will give them red iron-based blood because Protolis has more iron than Earth. The plants and chemosynthesizers may produce chemical sulfur from their hydrogen sulfide, leaving a bunch of sulfur just sitting on the ocean floor. And their bodies would just be squishy meat blobs, leaving them exposed, and they will bleed from the sand and hard rock scraping against them. So they may use the sulfur in the waters and form a shell around their bodies. We will call these creatures Cheiliphotos trophodotus filtru. The next creature we will talk about will be a small bug-like creature that would have two mandibles on it, as well as a large main fin on them. They would also have a large tail that would have hairs on it and an organ that would contain neon for communication on the top of them. They may dig into the sand near the chemo creatures and make tunnels under them. And this is what these tunnels would look like. The females of this species will not have mandibles, but be bigger than the males. And the males of them would have mandibles, have two fins, but be smaller. The mandibles would have two purposes for them, digging and fighting for mates. They will have a large crest structure on their back that will contain neon. They will be able to flash this to communicate with others of their species. These creatures may also be able to make clicking noises with their mandibles to confuse predators. We will call these creatures Candentus zophio. The next creatures we will talk about on Protolis will be 3-limbed vertebrates that will also have a 3-piece mouth and 3 tongues. Say that 3 times fast. They will also have a neon structure on their head for communication and a dorsal fin. These creatures will be social, hence why they have neon structures to communicate with each other. The reason these creatures have a neon structure instead of some other thing to communicate is because they share a common ancestor with the Candentus. These creatures will also be one of the smartest creatures on Protolis, still not being smart enough to do things like make complex attack movements, but smart enough to ambush prey. They will lay eggs in a sac that will contain 8 to 14 eggs depending on their species. After this, the eggs will eat half of their siblings and break out of the egg sac. The eggs will also be covered in a substance that will attract the chemosynthetic creatures. Then they will eat their tentacles as they push through here, and because they can't retract them, they will just grow endlessly into this, supplying the babies until they come out. These animals will be this big compared to a human. And this is what their digestive system will look like. Circulatory system. The gill system. Nervous system. And skeletal system. We will call these animals Ciscolumbumenozoo. The next creatures would be like the octopus on Protolis. They will have 6 limbs, 3 on each side. That 2 of them will have a bony structure made out of calcium carbonate. They will also have an enlarged head with yellow and a grayish-red coloration to blend into the chemosynthetic landscape. They will also have a beak to eat the organisms. This is what the layout of them would look like. For limbs used for locomotion, and 2 of those limbs would be in the front and used for stabbing prey. They would wait in the sediment where large gatherings of animals would come to feed and make homes. And when they sense movement above them, they would jump up and stab the prey. They would have a ring of eyes around them that would give them 360 vision, but also 3 main eyes on the front and back to give them color vision. This is what their nervous system would look like. Their gill system. Their circulatory system. Their digestive system. And their skeletal system. We will call these animals Inimicus cryptozoo. The next 10 last animal we will talk about will be snail-like invertebrates. They will have a trunk-like mouth that they can use to jet water at predators. And also a feather-like thing that can be extended for mates. These creatures will live near the mid to sea floor area of the ocean. This is where marine snow would begin falling, which they would eat and thrive off of. But the problem is that some of the octopus-like animals would live around here and eat them because of their soft bodies. So they may use some of the chemical sulfur produced by the plants and build shells out of the sulfur. When these creatures are alarmed about something, they can make a high-pitched screeching noise that can make the water around them vibrate, confusing predators like the octopus-like animals. And this is what those feather-like organs would look like. They would have neon in them, and only males would have them. We will name these animals Tests Gloiotis Zoo. The last creature we will talk about in this episode will be a fungus-like life form that will have sharp roots for digging into all sorts of like. They will also have large spore-producing hammered to speed far and wide. They will dig into alive, and sometimes resting, animals and plants. They may have small pores on their body that can intake hydrogen sulfide at high amounts. They can then release this hydrogen sulfide, and at this concentration it will melt the animal's tissues and turn them into a liquid. But animals wouldn't like these fungi because they would kill their species, so they may gain a color to camouflage as dead matter. They will have large tentacles at the top of them where they can shoot hammered far into the water. This is so they don't land on the same animal as them and kill each other. We will call these creatures Machites theurotexans. Thank you for watching episode 2 of Project Protolis. Come back next time to learn about the freshwater environments on Protolis.